We are seeing a general that got a little touchy allegedly with an Army colonel that was his aide, and right now we are seeing something that is unprecedented when it comes to these situations that we've never seen before. This is because there is massive news on this case that if I look back at the news back until January of this year, we're now just finally getting some kind of news on this appeal. Now let's break this down for you guys because I know a lot of you guys probably weren't aware of this situation. Now let's go back to 2019, but current day, this guy is retired. This is retired Air Force General John Hyten. He was the vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. His assistant then was Army Colonel Catherine Splitzoser in December of 2017. Now during this, it looks like Catherine had some kind of incident with him at some kind of military event at her private room where her hotel was at, where there was unwanted touching, kissing, just things of that nature, where essentially she wasn't comfortable with it. Now in 2019, Catherine decides to come out against this general, even though that's her boss. If you guys like this type of content, make sure you guys like it because you guys destroyed the last video, and it really does help with the stupid YouTube algorithm gods that are out there that somehow are mysterious, that YouTube acts like they don't know what they do, but we know what they do. You hit the like button, it makes the video go boom, and then bam, and it gets shown to other people that might like this content. To give you guys some kind of heads up, it looks like he was looking to put on this position essentially very shortly afterwards, but she had actually annotated this before, and the Air Force had done an investigation on this General Hyten, and really they didn't find anything, so they dropped the case and they moved forward, and he became the second in charge for the military. Now, during all of this, Hyten has said that these claims are false, and he says that they have no basis to them, but they've never actually seen any type of judicial process. That's because there is something called the Ferris Doctrine. That's because there is something that is annotated out there that has the Ferris Doctrine, which kind of gives a protection because it's based off military scope and what they would be doing, and they're trying to say that this would be in that practice of what that is, and that's kind of asinine, but we'll get to that. But it looks like Catherine is trying to sue this former general for $100,000 for damages, for emotional damages and things like that. Back in January, they comment on this and they say this. Her allegation is the general came to her room and wanted to talk about work-related purposes. Sergel said at the hearing, which was live streamed online, that along with other allegations clearly shows that her case is that he misused his authority at a military conference in a location where she would not have been if not for her military service. And that is where she's sitting on this, where she's like, yes, I was in my civilian capacity clothing in my room. However, I would have never actually been at this place if it were not for me actually fulfilling my role as the aide for this general. And her lawyer actually goes on the defense as well and says this. It is a type of activity that is too distinct from military activity to be considered something incident to military service. The fact that someone did not believe my client is not indicative that they should be immune from suit in their personal capacity. So now this is being appealed to the Ninth Circuit Court here as far as appeal goes, because she's looking for recourse as like, this needs to be addressed. Obviously, the military didn't address it. So what is the border here that we're seeing between a civilian capacity versus military, and who holds that? And what we're seeing now is that the court has actually ruled in favor of this former retired colonel and has said, yes, that she can have this lawsuit for $100,000. Military.com is cited in their article saying this. The appeals court, however, sided with the original district court ruling and remarked that they cannot fathom how the alleged sexual assault in this case could ever be considered an activity incident to military service. I 100% agree with that, because obviously, yes, you have to be at a conference in X, Y, or Z location, and yes, you are not wearing that uniform in that very instance, but you probably would have been at home if that was the case. They continue to say it's just common sense, and it is good to see a court use common sense to say sexual assault is not incident to service, Christensen said in a phone interview with military.com. It's a huge day for survivors. And her lawyer goes on to mention why this is important, because the fact that you're having a general that's being held accountable in a court which is probably more experienced than the military side. He says some courts are way too quick to punt on critical rulings by saying, well, you know, this is a military issue. We're not qualified to address it, he said. Which is great if you're talking about plans to invade a country or training, but it's nonsensical when it comes to issues like sexual assault. Now, the court made their decision, but they've obviously, annotated the other side of the aisle when they address this and moving forward, where they say this. The court noted that the off-base location weighs against application of the Ferris Doctrine, and that Spoltsoser, preparing for bed in her private hotel room, was in the same position as any civilian would have been at the time. Looking at this is a very messy situation, not only because it's military versus civilian side, it's also messy because we're talking about people that are in higher commission positions out there, which you're like, this happens at a lower level. But the fact that you're seeing this reflected at that level might mean that we're seeing a mirror shown to the world as what happens on the inside. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, we have the side to believe all women. We have the side that are very critical that women can lie. We're not here to debate that. But let's also reverse engineer a little bit. This woman was up to be probably one of the top higher commission officers, if you look at it, if she's being in the political sphere of people with stars, right? And unless we don't have the backstory, in theory, she would have kept going through her career and tried to progress. But also, it's not like she did this before he was annotated to be in this next position. So you're like, did she know that he was more than likely going to get it? We don't know that. We can't prove that. But she didn't do it as far as like a side of vengeance from what it looks like. And I find this interesting too, because the fact that the enlisted versus officer side of this debate and how this would even happen. And I'm like, man, it's crazy because, I wonder how many other people are getting out of whatever case that they were in, or possibly going to be charged under and maybe fined for whatever, sued for whatever. And they use this Ferris document as their legal justification that they couldn't be sued. And just to give you guys a little bit of an Air Force Times fun fact they added here about how many cases actually end up in a courtroom is actually shocking. Here's what they have to cite. Last year, DOD prosecuted 4% of all the unrestricted reports and got a conviction in 1%. Don Christensen said, a retired colonel who served as the Air Force's chief prosecutor and now runs this advocacy program. When the Department of Justice argues that, we have this robust system that holds people accountable, the reality is it doesn't. So opening up the civil courts will be important. And that doesn't even get into the unrestricted reports where people don't come forward and want anything done about it, which leaves us with this is a very small portion of cases that are even looked at in this light. This is where accountability gets held. Someone actually gets their day in court. They actually go through with it. And if he is innocent, I would hope he can prove it. If she's telling the truth, I hope they can prove it. Whatever it is, I hope we have justice from this and actually be able to move through this process. We have known for I don't know how many years now that the justice reform for military service needs to be put in place in handling these things. And we are inching away from, people improperly handling this as we move forward. But who do you think should handle these cases? And I'd love to see the evidence from this case and what the Air Force initially found to say that this was a nothing burger. But, we don't know what they saw. And I hope that this wasn't just some cover up for some general out there, because I think there's a lot of people that speculate on that. But let me know down in the comments what you think. If you guys have any other topics, stories, videos you want me to cover, hit me up on Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, TikTok, or down in the comments below. I love you guys. I'll see you next time.